and he wants to do it today.
Well, like Ben said on the desk, right? 4 draws in 500 against Magnus. You know what? Those 4 draws could come now, right? And that could instantly send Ben into the Armageddon for all we know. The point is, if the opportunity is there, you take it. And Nihal Sarin, Magnus himself said his performance is absolutely incredible. He's gone out of his way to praise his opponent, and it's very weird being on a stage as well where we're talking about a chess prodigy and it's not Magnus, but he sat there himself. This is very exciting. It has the potential to really serve us up a classic.
Exactly, and although he does start as the underdog Nihal Sarin, he has the weapons to hurt Magnus. He has the mouse skills. He did it against MVL, some trickery in a difficult position, helping him on the clock. He did it against the Anish Giri, forcing Anish to blunder a queen in a winning position, again, due to clock pressure. And if he can cling on, surviving these games against Magnus, take it down to the wire, down deep into the endgame, maybe he'll stand a chance. In the meantime, it's the Catalan opening to start this one.
Nihal's best chance in this match would be really trying to get into those time scrambles where both players have got about a minute on the clock and the position is dynamic. It's crazy. It's still got pieces on the board and he's not completely lost in that because Magnus converts that then. For Nihal, it's going to be about building that time pressure, trying to get to that Armageddon. The odds for him would increase. I'll say one thing. Nihal is the one player who's played more bullet,
right,
barring Hikaru Nakamura and Alireza Firouzja on the planet.
Which is...
And that sort of has built this cheat code in him, which gets activated under 1 minute. And I think that's what he'll be looking for today in this matchup.
I mean, that's amazing, right? The fact that he's, in terms of number of games played, he's 3rd place behind 2 of the favorites to win this whole thing. It really shows that he belongs in that top drawer alongside all of the rest of these names. So he's fantastic when the time gets scarce, but he has to build up that advantage to begin with, and he's already 1 minute behind Magnus at this stage of the game. And I have to say, I'm a little bit surprised because considering that game plan, like you rightly mentioned, Tanya, I feel like Nihal should be blitzing these out to try and get a 1-2 minute advantage very, very early on, but he's on the receiving end of that right now.
Yeah, the one thing about Magnus, though, is that he at least starts games quite quickly. The only time he really slows down is if it's super complicated, there's a lot to calculate. But this isn't one of those types of positions. It's hard, of course, when you start with black. For Nihal, a draw would be a great way to begin this quarterfinal. But the pawn that he went up, Nihal Sarin, is about to fall. Magnus pawn hunting with his queen. It's a queen's gambit accepted in a way, but Magnus is going to remove the word gambit from the equation.
On the very next move. And, you know, speaking of trying to build on the clock, it's not easy when you're up against Magnus Carlsen. You also have to balance that on the edge of your sword by not just getting into a position that you're completely lost in the first 15 moves.
Sure. Yeah.
So you have to play the good moves. You have to keep control over the clock. And that doesn't seem to be going so well for Nihal so far, reaching the 7.5 minute mark. And I still think it's early days. The Catalan, one of the most studded openings, slightly surprised how much time Nihal's taking here.
I'm worried that we have some parallels here from the conversations that we were talking about earlier with Nodirbek versus Firouzja, for example, where you can be an absolute beast with under a minute on your clock. But to what extent does that matter when your opponent still has 5, for example? And I'm a little scared because that advantage is about to go above 2 minutes, and we're only on move 12 of a very well-studied opening. So I'm curious to get inside the head of Nihal Sarin here and find out, well, what is it he's thinking about right now? What is he planning? What does he unleash off the back of this?
Yeah, he unleashes this move, a pawn sacrifice of his own, and Magnus reacts there on the camera. This one is a pawn sacrifice in 2 different ways. Can be captured by the queen, it can be captured by the pawn. Either way, there are downsides for white. He does take with the pawn. Maybe if we just go back a move to show what could have happened if he had taken with the queen here, Magnus Carlsen. The black knight would have jumped into b3 with a nasty fork. This one devastating the black knight, snacking on the white rook in the corner next move. Instead, taking with the pawn comes with downsides as well, as we see Nihal has jumped into the center with his knight, and the white pawns are wrecked on the queen side, all isolated, all weak, long-term, short-term. This is a great way to fight against Magnus in the opening. Go direct as Magnus swings his queen across. Already a question mark from the world number 1.
Magnus going direct as well. Yes, I see the question mark, but again, a very human approach, right? He sets ideas of his own. That bishop from c1 is now about to snack on that pawn on h6 as the g7 pawn was pinned, forcing Nihal Sarin to fight against that threat. He does attack the queen, which feels a little vulnerable. Magnus, did he rush through with that square?
Yeah, Magnus rushing. Nihal closed his eyes there, leant back. I don't know if he was taking a short nap, whether he was meditating. That is a feature of some of the modern generation. This meditative state they go into, just stay in this kind of trance, just remove the nerves, to stay focused, stay present. I will mention there is a bit of a dynamic here. Nihal, compared to some of his compatriots, like Gukesh, like Pragnananda, like Erigaisi, hasn't faced Magnus that many times. I was looking through games between these two. They are few and far between, mostly in speed chess. So some experience there, but often you need to have experienced those devastating losses. You need to kind of believe with a first win against Magnus that you can do it again. But Nihal, he's doing this for the first time.
First little bit of a think there from Magnus, eating into that time advantage, which was up to about 2 minutes, now shrunk to closer to 1 minute. Queen h5 played, but continuing to hunt with the bishop moving back to the back rank.
He does, and he makes that move pretty quickly. And to your point about, his teammates, his compatriot, I will point out that Nihal Sarin was the first Indian prodigy to break out into the scene. But his training, his method of improving at chess has been drastically different compared to Arjun, Gukesh and Pragnananda, where he focused so much on these fast play formats, on playing online a lot, and sort of mastered that, especially during the pandemic, which is why we see him with these incredible performances when it comes to speed play. Somehow in the classical, it always felt like he felt a little short. He felt just a little bit away from the rest of them who focused on the classical format, and that's something I think Nihal is actively working on now. But so far, his biggest strength has been speed chess.
And it's paying off so far in this game. The Black Knight has been happily gobbling up, like Pac-Man, all of Magnus's pawns. Suddenly it's Nihal. He started the game a pawn up. He gave a pawn back. He gave another pawn. He was a pawn down. Now he's a pawn up again. And for now, Magnus has some compensation due to active pieces. But Nihal, great start to this game. I've been teammates with him before in some leagues in the Spanish league. Literally at dinner, he's playing bullet chess on his phone. He's team meetings, playing bullet chess on his phone. 2 minutes before a classical game, playing bullet chess on his phone.
That's why he's so quick. If you can do that on a touch screen, like a mouse, you can be really precise. Doing that on touch screen is insane.
His speed is absolutely nuts. There's a reason he's called the Flash.
The Flash. I'm learning that for the first time. And will it be a flash in the pan? Will it be a win for Nihal Sarin this match? First, he moves his queen off some vulnerable squares. The white knight leaps forward. Magnus is trying his best to create threats, create some action going, but that can be guarded by the black bishop, the weak e6 pawn. Still looking very healthy for Nihal. It feels like he's playing from a position of strength. If he wants to, he can just lock this game down, maybe return a pawn to force a draw. But
it almost
maybe more
feels like his game plan here is, right, let's see if we can swap off all the pieces and play against the pawns on a3 and c5 and just play against those weaknesses long term. If I get a win, great. If it ends up being a draw, it's going to be uncomfortable for Magnus. It certainly feels like Nihal here in game number 1, at least for now, has the upper hand. But he has the upper hand on the board, and he's back to 2 minutes down on the clock.
But he's doing really well on the board. He's up that pawn. Right now, attacked, comes in with a big threat, this last knight move. Knight takes pawn would be a fork on the queen and the rook. Expecting Nihal to find a way to defend it, to use one of the pieces. He could think about improving the position of his bishop, to use that as a defensive piece, or maybe even a potential rook lift to keep that pawn defended. But to your point, John, whichever he decides, he needs to do it fast.
Yep.
He goes with the bishop, connecting the two rooks.
Great move, great start. Magnus quick with a response. And no, Magnus isn't necessarily known as the speediest these days, but he used to be great at bullet himself. And I think, at least in the middle of a game, he's one of the fastest. He trusts his instincts. He knows what type of endgame he might be wanting to head for. He's very practical, Magnus Carlsen. So getting him down to the 30-second versus 30-second mark, that is already a huge achievement and not easy to accomplish. Nihal, definitely with 4 minutes left, needs to keep this pace going.
He does keep the pace on the board, right? That last move is also hinting at that e-pawn moving forward.
For sure.
It's a 4 versus 3 on the right flank for Nihal. And that advantage is only as strong as the mobility of the pawns at the center of the board. So it's something that Magnus has to worry about. Once that pawn gets to e4, it's going to shut off the light squared bishop as well. Magnus Carlsen improves the position of the king. Are we going to see the pawn advance?
Ooh, very subtle play. I'm going to say very professional from both sides. The king positions not entirely comfortable, so they get ready. Just kind of keeping each other guessing. I think your move's going to land very, very shortly, Tanya. The black e-pawn is about to push, but Magnus might want to either brace for impact and get ready to reply, or start the action himself before Nihal is ready.
Magnus Carlsen, he's on a think. The clock's getting closer now. Magnus down a pawn, but a lot of piece dynamics, especially on the left flank, trying to think about how he can make the most of it.
Plenty of tempting moves. One move would be knight to b5, the white knight jumping forward to attack the black queen. You could think about pushing your c-pawn forward, some calculation involved there, maybe another temporary pawn sacrifice just to open lines for the white rooks. For now, the white queen struggling to be improved, the white bishop also struggling to move. Feels like a knight or pawn move incoming from Magnus Carlsen, but a bit of indecision, time advantage drifting away.
I'm glancing at why Magnus is spending that much time in this position, and this is definitely not my own, but it turns out bishop takes pawn is on in this position, because combining that with your idea of pushing the pawn forward, David, you can take the pawn first and then fork. Magnus has decided against it, but he was probably doing some calculation on whether that line was any good for him.
That would have been very, very flashy. We could have seen a bishop takes pawn move followed by white pushing forward with c6. And instead, there was a little trade in the position. And let's show that possibility that Magnus probably spent 2 minutes calculating there. He could have played bishop takes b7, and if the black knight recaptures c6 here, would have regained the material, potentially with interest. I think the black bishop would be forced back, and after some trades here, we could see the white rook coming in, maybe a queen trade as well, and an endgame that Magnus possibly didn't like. The black bishop would have been very strong in the center of the board, even though he might have ended up with level material. Magnus instead, if we go back to the game now, keeping queens on, keeping a bit more tension, and at least now it does feel like a 3-result game. The other one might have been closer to a draw, but not what Magnus wants.
And what's great as well is that inside the head of Magnus Carlsen, he would have just looked at everything we just saw on the analysis board in his head and then tried to evaluate what does the endgame look like here. He's probably gone a couple of moves beyond what we even saw with the help of the analysis board before making that decision. So it's those moments where Magnus Carlsen chooses to use the majority of his time. He is still 1 minute and 45 seconds up on the clock, it should be said, and that's going to start becoming really important in a couple of minutes.
Absolutely. The clock is going to be a big factor in this one because the position is pretty complicated. You know, Nihal, he has that extra pawn, but look at the knight at the edge of the board. You know, it doesn't have a very bright future, at least not anytime soon. It's tied down to the defense of the b7 pawn. You can't go back with it so easily. Magnus, both rooks on open line, the bishop on b7 unchallenged for the rest of the game, doing a beautiful job as well. This is definitely enough compensation and piece activity for that pawn.
Definitely. Full compensation for Magnus Carlsen. Nihal not looking too comfortable. Also in the back of your mind, if you haven't faced Magnus Carlsen too many times, you know his reputation. You know in an endgame, he's going to take advantage of any slip you might make. And already, rook takes rook incoming. Will Magnus regain the pawn now with his queen? There are some fancy tactics. The black rook could potentially come down to the first rank with a check on the white king, but Magnus has it all under control. Will he restore the material balance? Nihal with 2 minutes. We're going to see all of his speed skills on show, surely now.
And the b7 pawn does fall. I will tell you the one good part about not facing Magnus too many times is that perhaps you haven't lost to him too many times. So that trauma does not exist. We'll see which one plays out here. Bishop to f1, defending the check. Now white unpins. Magnus getting ready to activate that bishop. Rook takes pawn. Is that a move that could pick up a pawn? A very key pawn in the position for Nihal.
Yeah, he can go for it now. Maybe he's just hesitating, scared of being pinned by the white rook. Should still all be under control for Nihal Sarin, but he brings his king towards the center instead. Another very logical move.
He needs to start doing this faster, though. I mean, we have seen this time and time again from Magnus. He's very good at grinding out positions that look like they're drawn, and like we said on day one, the position's drawn until it's not. And that's all well and good if you haven't played Magnus that much before. But when he's also got over doubled your time, you just need to get a move on. And Nihal Sarin, he might be a speed demon, but we need to really, really move.
Big threat on the board. The black knight was about to be pinned by the white rook, so it leaps away instead. Magnus now can go munching. He can grab the black a7 pawn, restore the material balance. Currently Nihal a pawn up, but instead flicks in a check first. And now asking Nihal, big question. Do you step towards the center with the black king? Looks like you might get mated if you do so, but instead he goes back to the wing, back to the flank, and Magnus now some quick moves, applying some pressure. That white a-pawn, so dangerous potentially.
And that is the hardest pawn for a knight to counter. It's the one on the flank lines, A or H. That A4 passer gives Magnus a strong edge to play for in the position. Nihal trying to set up his own counterplay, but with the black king cut off on the side of the board, I'm wondering if this is got all the ingredients for a making of another Magnus Carlsen classic.
And watch out, there's a checkmate in 2 threatened by Magnus Carlsen. The white bishop was threatening to come back, force the black king to the back rank with the white rook delivering the killer blow. This last move given a question mark, but fully understandable by Nihal Sarin, giving the black king some breathing space. And right now he's down a pawn, but the black rook, black knight also eyeing up a pawn of their own.
But this is where Magnus has the opportunity to turn a screw. He smells the opportunity. Actually makes the wrong move in this scenario, but crucially, it's 3.5 minutes, plays 1 minute. There will more likely than not be additional chances for Magnus here, even if this one is a missed one.
I don't believe this is going to be a missed one for Magnus. He's up on the position because of that A passer, even if Nihal wins the F2 pawn, but it's the clock. You know,
Exactly.
48 seconds, Nihal's a beast, he's flash, but with Magnus having 3.5 minutes, that's a big time deficit.
Huge moment. Magnus can win on the spot, but he has to find a narrow path. He has to start with a rook check, forcing the black king onto a light square. Then the white bishop would have come and checked the black rook. Instead, he misses it, Magnus Carlsen. He's going to give back his pawn. It's a 2 versus 2 situation here on the king's side in terms of pawns. Dead, drawn endgame, but no time for Nihal.
Bishop takes knight, get the bishop and the knight off the board. Why is he thinking? Rook takes pawn has been played. For Magnus, he has to run away with the knight.
Magnus, is he wondering whether to try and flag Nihal Sarin here? He could offer a draw as well. This is a dead level endgame, but Magnus with that moral decision to play on time against his younger rival here, or to keep going, and wow, he gives up a pawn, Magnus Carlsen, in his quest to try and win this game.
He's playing to flag. He's down a pawn. He's going to try and create chances against Nihal's king. Nihal, he's done everything in his life to show his speed skill. Right now, this is where it all has to come together if he has to survive this.
It's crazy. Magnus missed the rook h7 check, bishop f7 check, and taking the black rook earlier. He would have forced a bishop versus knight endgame. Now it's a dead, drawn rook endgame. It's all about the clock. Nihal Sarin, 30 seconds. He's going to show us why he has this reputation as the Flash.
2.5 minutes. For Magnus, it's a 2-minute advantage. He's running through. Nihal with a smile on his face. He knows that Magnus is coming for his clock.
Wow, and the pre-moves will begin. You cannot trade rooks as Magnus Carlsen. That would guide the game towards a draw, and we repeat the position. Magnus agreeing to the draw reluctantly there. Maybe not realizing it was a repetition. Nihal escapes.
Opportunities there for Magnus Carlsen to turn the screw, but game number 1 ends peacefully. This is excellent tension we're building in this match. Nihal Sarin maybe has escaped a little bit here, but it also gives him an excellent opportunity to try and strike back immediately with the